Who wants to see a magic trick? Now you see it, now it's gone.
I promised Darren no witchcraft, and no witchcraft's what he's going to get.
One half of the great Samantha versus Jeannie debate. It made us laugh, and it got more and more people to break that glass ceiling. So, why did the love potion wear off of Bewitched? Was it another victim of corporate bigwigs only seeing the show as a dollar sign? Or did our actors not get along nearly as well as they did on screen? Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am your host, Nostalgic Nick, here to conjure up these answers and much more, including the much earlier ending that Bewitched almost got by order of the biggest star. Changing TV trends. Bewitched actually tackled some pretty heavy themes in its 8 seasons, and that's cause the show was actually rooted pretty deeply in some mature themes. Let's start with the start. Rehearsals for the pilot began the exact same day that JFK got unalived, you know. And director William Asher had been pretty good friends with him. He even produced Marilyn Monroe's Happy Birthday song.
Happy birthday, Mr. President.
And, well, from that moment on, the premise behind the pilot became all about the surreal end of normalcy for a regular guy. Life as he knew it would never be the same. And yeah, that's pretty much life after that earth-shattering event. Now, if you know Bewitched, you know it kinda walked a weird line. When it premiered, we definitely needed that dose of fantasy, escapism, all that good fun that helped us forget about the tough, boring, regular problems of the world. But it also did not shy away from tackling serious subject matter. Spells were usually some kind of metaphor, especially in the early seasons. They addressed classism, gender roles, feeling outcast. It's no coincidence that if we look at the numbers, that first season, Bewitched was, well, ABC's prized pony. And it was the highest rated sitcom of the big 3. Its only competition was Bonanza. They were riding high. They got primetime Emmys for directors, actors. I mean, this was a goldmine for anyone's career. But the world was changing, and so were the things that people wanted to say and people wanted to watch. By later seasons, the subject matter wasn't as allegorical, but it leaned into comedy. We got tons of mishaps with identical cousins, but the cooks in the kitchen, well, they wanted to follow different recipes. We know this thanks to the Bewitched book by Herbie J. Pilato, which honestly is a must-read for any fan of Bewitched. But he said that different crew members wanted different things for the show. Writer Barbara Avedon is on record saying this: "If I can't write a message into the script I'm working on, then I don't go up to the plate. If the story doesn't teach some kind of lesson, then it's not worth writing." But on the other side, Bewitched director E.W. Swackheimer said this: "Television is supposed to take your mind off what happens during the day, not necessarily to sit there and teach you something. So you had 2 different schools of thought in one writer's room." Well, as the years went on, people, the audience, wanted something a bit more grittier. The world was falling in love with shows like The Mary Tyler Moore Show and All in the Family, and yeah, both were sitcoms, but way more grounded than, well, witchcraft. And all of their lessons and issues could be way more transparent, it's in your face, it's relatable, all that good stuff.
Go back to sleep, dear.
Bottom line, the new kids on the block knew what people wanted, and they wanted something different, something more real while still bringing the humor. And then you have Bewitched. It's so rooted in its wacky magical mishaps, it had no way of delivering that. Of course, with changing of the viewership trends, it means network bigwigs are gonna have their fingers on the pulse of what's hot, what to produce, and especially what to prioritize. If they had any reason to doubt that Bewitched would still be their big breadwinner, well, then Bewitched wasn't gonna get a good slice of the pie now, was it? And we see that when we take a look at the TV landscape when Bewitched poofed off the air. Its time slot got briefly filled by a Paul Lynde comedy.
Forgive me for not rising, but I'm up to my neck in work.
Hey, that's a familiar face, but absolutely zero magic. And at the same hour, other networks were airing the likes of the Carol Burnett Show over on CBS, and NBC had Adam 12. Like I said, way more rooted in reality and with bigger stakes, action, and way outside the house. Like the rural purge just wanted to keep dragging us farther and farther from our tidy picket fences and cozy kitchens. I don't know about you, maybe it's hindsight is 2020, but I definitely could have used a bit more time in the Stevens household or hanging out around Mayberry. And I stand by that to this day. Give me wholesome shows, please. But would the biggest enemy of Bewitched come from the show's own ranks? Some scandalous discourse. On the outside, the Stevens family was kinda normal, but there was something darker going on. And that's right, this relationship was abusive.
Calling me a liar.
If the shoe fits.
At least there is some debate that started stirring around Bewitched. Part of that is from how revolutionary the whole premise is. That Samantha is the one with way more power than Darren, no matter how you slice it. Poof, she can turn him into a frog, help or ruin his day. And it's a secret that she kept until after they were married? Jeez, they really muddied the water on the morals of this show. But on the other side of the coin, some viewers thought that Darren was a complete jerk for always making Samantha hide her background as a witch, hide who she truly is. We checked out some discussion boards even today, and longtime fans of the show and newcomers too, they get a bad taste in their mouths for Darren being so against Samantha's witchy heritage. But again, here's the thing, if we look back, Samantha is pretty in control of the entire decision. She wants to try her hand at the normal mortal life. And she's the one, after all, that decided to keep it a big secret for so long. But still, Darren is pretty anti-witch, not cool. Especially very early on, you know. And yeah, he could get pretty loud about it, dude. Careful, I have elephant ears right now. He would yell at Samantha, which, sure, Dick York of course made that pretty funny, but that in itself can be a red flag. What do you think about Samantha and Darren's relationship? What about his views on her magic? It's a messy debate, and it's still going on today. And part of that is just how different and revolutionary Bewitched truly was. Over on Jeannie, yeah, you have a woman who can do magic, and the hapless guy in her life who can't. But that had the whole master Jeannie obedience thing, and it kinda canceled out any big power struggle. But with Samantha, she knew what she wanted and had every means of getting it, and she had the power that Darren could never have. It really was an interesting dynamic in a time when the country was still figuring out the entire equal rights thing. And that made this entire relationship a bit of a headache to figure out for viewers. But this wouldn't be the last big hurdle that Bewitched would ask us to deal with. Changing cast. Bewitched had its own trial by fire when Dick York had to, of course, drop out of playing Darren. We do have a couple videos going into great detail about why Dick York had to step away and the consequences from it, so check those out next. But for the sake of this discussion, it was a real dangerous place to be in. We all know about Aunt Clara and Esmeralda. Casting had to be handled way differently for Darren because of just how big and important he was. Enter Dick Sargent, who, funny enough, had actually been the show's first choice for Darren. But scheduling conflicts with another pilot prevented Dick Sargent from doing the role. So we got Dick York, and he was great. But now Sargent's back, and he has a different take on how to play the new Darren. You know, compare this to the recasting of Marilyn on the Munsters. I know some people didn't even realize they had a new actress. The change was really subtle. But this one was way more extreme. And it's not just because Sargent played Darren less everything. They were so different. The producers actually saw this as an opportunity to brand the show as two shows, the York Bewitched and the Sargent. So personally, I see pros and cons to both Darrens. But there are definitely fans out there that are way more decisive than I am. There's tons of forums talking about it, and I think one of the standout comments is definitely the one saying that the darkest part of Bewitched was inflicted on the kids, because there wasn't really any explanation from the switch from York to Sargent. And the crack in our psyche, well, we're still recovering from it. But the main takeaway is, well, the change was not for everyone. And so, the people who hated the cast change, was it just limited to the fans? Or did it include some very important people close to home?
He liked anything in skirts, or out of them.
Trouble within the ranks. Everybody loves an underdog, and everybody wants things to work out for the new guy. And for everybody's take, we want to just get along with our coworkers and make the day bearable. But what if none of those things applied? Well, leading up to York's departure from the show, it was really rough. The guy was hooked on pain meds and it just got more and more intense. And we all know too well what that can do to a guy and the people around him trying to work with him. Dick York needed extra help around the set, which is totally understandable. He'd need to go to his table and lay on a flat board to basically get his back feeling a bit better. Crew members stationed themselves at all doors in case they were too heavy to open and he got hurt all over again. And this is really cool. They would make custom slanted walls all around the set so Dick could lean on them unsuspectingly. But when his condition kept getting worse and worse, the script writers had to quickly write him out of a bunch of episodes, now leaning more on Samantha's other magical relatives. The only other option was to keep Darren on a couch or a bed, so York had the smallest hope of making it into any scene.
One that's every bit as nice as the one Louise Tate wears, because you deserve it.
On top of that, Dick York didn't fully love his character anymore. He actually hated that Darren was so against the magic, you know, the most fun part of the show. He also hated how angry he was and would have loved to play the role more like how Sargent did, but he was directed to play it more abrasive. It was rough, and it was the perfect recipe for tension, not just back tension. And when Dick York left, the tension did not all go with him. It came all over again, but now you had Dick Sargent in his place. Agnes Moorehead, you know, the great Endora, did not hold back on why she hated the change. She loved Dick York, thought he did a great job with the role. But the biggest crew clash came from the one sworn in holy matrimony. That's right, Elizabeth Montgomery's marriage to William Asher, well, it took a nosedive. And I can only imagine what a nightmare that would be for the couple and for everyone on set or in a 10-mile radius of the set. To have to work creatively, long hours with someone you hate and you want to split up from. There's also chatter that once they split up, Elizabeth started hanging out with a different Bewitched showrunner, Richard Michaels, and planted roots in Honolulu. But wait, there's one more extra messy layer to this love triangle, or should I say love square, because on top of everything else, lovers drifting apart, colleagues ending up together. Apparently, Dick York was in love with Elizabeth Montgomery, big time. Like, it almost feels too generous calling it an open secret. It was that well known. And it got to the point that Montgomery was feeling kind of uncomfortable. Great for on-screen chemistry, yes, but pretty dang awkward for day-to-day working. Especially when the feelings just aren't reciprocated and you gotta work together very close for years at a time.
Well, I came into a little something.
Honestly, I think they should make a show based on the behind-the-scenes drama of Bewitched. A Witch's Wish. One of the popular reasons cited for any show ending, and this includes Bewitched, is of course ratings. Oh, the ratings aren't up to scratch. Time to send it to a network down the street where it can frolic with all the other canceled shows. Or the bigwigs decided they knew better than the experts on the ground and made decisions that were miserable for everyone. And to be sure, Bewitched had some things going against it, like a tricky time slot migration and plot points we had trouble deciding on. But this is probably one of the very few cases where a relatively long-running sitcom had support from the top to the bottom. Everyone who needed to greenlight more of the show gave the thumbs up. Heck, even with the ratings in the toilet after the Darren switch, network executives were still saying yes. Go ahead, we've got you under control for 2 more seasons and we're gonna honor that. Let's go. Yeah, everyone except the leading lady herself, Elizabeth Montgomery. By the time the end was near for Bewitched, she was split from her husband who she jumped into this entire spell-casting business with. It was a couple's project after all, and on top of that, yeah, 8 years is a long time to commit to anything. Especially playing the same character, you know, almost a decade. By that point, Montgomery had just had enough. We turn again to the Wizard of Bewitched facts, Herbie J. Pilato, who figured out that Bewitched was not in fact canceled because of low ratings, but instead because Elizabeth, our Samantha, didn't want to do the promised seasons 9 and 10.
What's happened? I've lost my powers.
Actually, we're pretty lucky we even got 8 seasons out of her, or that we even got to see her in Bewitched at all. Because even before joining the show, Elizabeth was pretty ready to just quit acting. It was Asher who told her not to, that she's too talented to stop. And yeah, I do agree with William here, she's definitely one of the best. but I do wonder if she maybe needed to take a break. Pilato calls her feelings on acting a love-hate relationship, so it stinks she had to keep going longer than she wanted. Of course, we all would have lost out big time had Elizabeth not chosen to do it. But during the filming of Bewitched, Elizabeth Montgomery was ready to throw in the towel again. Around season 5 and 6, she just wasn't thrilled with the way the show was going. Of course, she had her personal troubles too. Elizabeth was ready for a chance to start choosing her own roles again. There's a whole world of characters she could try out for if only Bewitched ended.
That was very good too, Daddy.
So, apparently when it came time to get the ball rolling for seasons 9 and 10, Elizabeth had one heck of an ultimatum. According to Ackerman's son, Montgomery said she'd only agree if Ackerman fired Asher, her soon-to-be ex. But Ackerman was loyal to his buddy and his creative other half and tried to tell Elizabeth, or Liz as he called her, "Hey, Liz, he's my production partner, I can't do that to him." And, well, Montgomery's response was this: "Well then, Bewitched is done." Dun dun dun. And, yeah, Bewitched was done. Elizabeth got her wish. If you're a Montgomery fan, you know she went on to do pretty well for herself, a lot of TV movies. We have a great then and now video if you want to see what the entire cast got into after. But Montgomery chose completely different material from Bewitched, and some of it was really dark. The silver lining is this: I don't think the show overstayed its welcome at all. I don't think there's a bad season. And so, was this fate better than the treatment that other shows got? Did Bewitched stay long enough, or did it end before it could reach its full potential? Did it tie things up nicely or drop the ball completely? I need to know your thoughts. I definitely feel a difference between the early years and just before things fell apart. Like one later episode, I think it's season 6. The episode is using a ton of footage from way earlier in the show. And stuff like this is kinda weird. It's a bit messy to watch. But if they could have given us at least one more high quality hurrah with our favorite magical family, I mean, hey, I'm not certainly complaining. But for what we did get, I'm grateful for all the memories of waving my hands around and imagining my room getting cleaned in a blink. Or pretending to turn my math teacher into a giant snail. Trying to make ice cream come out of water fountains. I mean, Bewitched gave us that. It gave us fuel for our imaginations, and hey, thank you for that. Bewitched let us all bond, while we pretended this boring, difficult world could just be a bit more magical. Bewitched gave us a lot when we needed it most. It got us all thinking, even for 1 second, that a twitch of the nose and a wave of the hands and our problems could be magicked away. Or at least turned into something that we could laugh our socks off at.
And if he told you, everybody would know. That's right.
But it also took a lot from the people most involved. Elizabeth, York, Asher. And its greatest strengths ended up holding it back from correcting course, because in the end, no one spell was gonna keep Bewitched on the air for any longer. But you better believe we here at Do You Remember are gonna keep it alive and well for as long as we're here. And so, now's my favorite part of the video. It's when I open the floor to you. What was your favorite episode of Bewitched? Did you enjoy the later seasons as much as the start? Were you more of a Dick York fan or a Sargent one? Get down below and tell us all your memories of Bewitched. Were you more of a Jeannie fan? Hey, tell us. We had a ton of fun putting this one together. We really felt the magic, and if you did, hit the thumbs up icon, make sure you're subscribed. But most importantly, from my entire team at Do You Remember, thanks so much for being here and have a wonderfully magical day.